Baseball ASMR. Hello and welcome to Baseball ASMR, a place where we talk about baseball in a relaxing way, or should I say, konnichiwa. Today we are talking about the NPB, the Nippon Professional Baseball League in Japan. That's their version of the MLB. It's a very old league, so I'm going to go through the history and some of the major milestones in the history of the league, and then get to some players that have come over to MLB from the NPB. I initially recorded this video about a year ago and had some technical difficulties, and then re-recorded it this past spring in anticipation of the Tokyo series, and had different technical issues. So hopefully this third time is the charm, and we get to learn a little bit about baseball in Japan. And I also wanted to do this because I'm a big fan of Japan. My partner and I both love the country and its history and its people and a lot of their traditions. It's on our travel list. That's the next major place we want to go to. As you can see here, I have some pins, the Hanshin Tigers and the Hiroshima Carp. And then this Fuji AC was like an independent touring league a long time ago in the States, ran by a Japanese-American guy who I don't know if he played, but so yeah, he organized this league. And then I've got some other trinkets here. I don't remember what this is from, but maybe sake, just a little Japanese character that means beauty. I have a friend who gave me this a while ago. It is obviously a kamikaze headband. He's a big World War II guy. He has a podcast about World War II called War Daddy. You can check it out. He has a whole season about the battleship Yamato, which is pretty good. And then, of course, I have this playbill from a play I saw called Sumo last year or earlier this year. I don't remember. And it was about a bunch of sumo guys trying to become yokozunas. It was really good. So yeah, I have been a fan of Japan. I didn't know anything about the NPB before researching this video, other than I knew some players had come over, and there's a whole system called the posting system, how players come over to the MLB in the States, like Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Roki Sasaki. So yeah, let's dive in here and we can see what the NPB is all about. Oh, I also wanted to do this video because I wanted to show this clip of Cubs outfielder and former NPB player Seiya Suzuki taking BP with what looks like a katana, just slicing baseballs in half. If you remember that old iPhone game like Fruit Ninja, it's kind of like that. But I thought it was cool. This was in the lead up to this past season's Tokyo series between the Cubs and the Dodgers. It's a fun bit of PR. All right, so we'll start with the history of the league, and it goes back a long way. So if you're not as interested in that, I'll have timestamps below. But I don't know if you've seen my KBO video. This league is a lot older, so the history part is probably going to be a little bit longer here in this video than it was for that. And then probably in another video, I'd like to compare and contrast the MLB with the KBO and the NPB, just because they all have such similar roots, but they have grown in different ways and have different like rule peculiarities, or like how different leagues approach the game with contact hitting or power, etc. But for now, we're going to do the history of the NPB starting in 1872, way back. So baseball in Japan, or Yakkyu, as it's locally called, traces its roots back to the Meiji era. It was introduced in 1872 by American Horace Wilson. And just as a note throughout this video, I've tried my best to research the the correct pronunciation of everything, but if I slip up, please, give me a little grace. I'm doing my best. Horace Wilson is an American English professor. He taught at what is now the University of Tokyo. He brought baseball over. And then the following year, the first recorded baseball match or game in Japan. It was between, I'm going to move these so I have a little more room. It was between students from the University of Tokyo, I'll just say UT here, versus members of the Yokohama Country and Athletic Club. That was the first match. And then by the 1920s, here I'll underline these so you can see them a little better. By the 1920s and 30s, baseball had become a national pastime in Japan. National pastime in Japan. And there were high school tournaments that drew a lot of attention and crowds. And then in 1934, Japanese media mogul Matsutaro Shoriki he created the first Japanese baseball team, the Dai Nippon Tokyo Yakiyu Kurabu, which translates as the Great Japan Tokyo Baseball Club. So he created the Dai Nippon Tokyo Yakiyu Kurabu. The first team. And this team played a slew of visiting American baseball stars who were barnstorming in Japan, just going on a tour, playing games. And that included Babe Ruth, Jimmy Fox, and Lou Gehrig. The following year, in 1935, this team, the Dai Nippon Tokyo Yakiyu Kurabu, barnstormed across the U.S. So I'll just say the DNTYK. They came to the U.S. and barnstormed. Barnstorming trip. And they played against American Semi-Pro and Pacific Coast League teams. PCL and Semi-Pro. And just as a fun fact, the PCL is one of the conferences or leagues in the AAA minor leagues in the States. But it was an independent league back then. So that brings us to 1935. Like I said, this might be a while, but hopefully you find it interesting. I do. We'll just say 35 continued. To help with popularity in the U.S., they renamed the Dai Nippon Tokyo Yakiyu Kurabu to the Tokyo Giants. And they adopted the uniform of the New York Giants, who later became the San Francisco Giants. So you're probably familiar with the logo. And then the Tokyo Giants later would become the Yomiuri Giants when they moved. Next we have from 1936 to 1950, pro baseball in Japan was played in the JBL, or Japanese Baseball League. And there were 8 teams. And in those 16 years, the Yomiuri Giants dominated, and they won 9 of the championships. Then in 1950, that's a big year for baseball in Japan. The JBL renamed themselves the NPB, the Nippon Professional Baseball League, and they reorganized into 2 leagues. So they had 8 teams while they were the JBL. And so they took those 8 teams and they split them into 2 leagues, and then they added new teams to each league. So let's see, can I fit them all here? The Central League, they had the Chonichi Dragons. Hopefully I can fit them all. The Chonichi Dragons, the Hanshin Tigers. I have the pin here for them. I like that logo a lot, actually. The Yomiuri Giants. And the Shochiku Robins. So those were the 4 existing teams that were moved into the Central League. And then the 4 new teams that they created when they became the NPB were the Hiroshima Carp, the other pin over here, the Kokutetsu Swallows, can you see that? Yeah, okay, you can see that. The Nishi Nippon Pirates, and the Taiyo Whales. I'll add them over here. Taiyo Whales. So those were the teams when the NPB was started in the Central League. The Chunichi Dragons, Hanshin Tigers, Yomiuri Giants, Shochiku Robins, Hiroshima Carp, Kokutetsu Swallows, Nishi Nippon Pirates, and the Taiyo Whales. And now we'll do the Pacific League. Have you ever watched the NPB? Do you know anything about them? Comment below if you have. I'd like to check out a game. I don't know how. Maybe on YouTube. So now we have the Pacific League. These are the original teams in 1950. We have the Hankyu Braves, the Nankai Hawks, the Daiei Stars, the Tokyo Flyers, and those 4 teams were the original teams from the JBL, and then 3 new teams were added to this league. The Kintetsu Pearls, the Mainichi Orions, and the Nishitetsu Clippers. So the Pacific League had 7 teams, and the Central League had 8. So for a total of 15 teams. And those were the teams when the NPB started in 1950. They're different now, and we'll get to that later. But those were the original teams. And that businessman from before, Matsutaro Shoriki, he served as the unofficial commissioner of the league when it started. And he oversaw the first Japan series, which is their version of the World Series. It's the championship. And the first Japan series in the NPB was between the Orions and the Robins. And the Orions won 4-2. So they won the first Japan series. And then by the end of the 50s, several teams were contracted or merged. So then they came down to 12 teams from 15 at the start of the NPB. So then we'll move on to the 60s and the 70s. This is on September 1st, 64. Nankai Hawks prospect Masanori Murakami became the first Japanese player to play in the MLB. So Nankai Hawks prospect Masanori Murakami, first Japanese player to play in the MLB. A little trivia for you. He pitched for the San Francisco Giants. He would later go back to play in Japan, and there were disputes over his contract between his Japanese team and the NPB and the Giants. Since no one had done this before, they argued over where he should be allowed to play. And so Murakami's, the arguments and disputes over his contract led to, in 1967, the U.S.-Japan player contract agreement. And this was an agreement between the U.S. and the Japan that stated all Japanese baseball players would stay in Japan and play for the NPB, and all American players, either at both the major and minor league level, would stay in the U.S. and play in the MLB. So basically, it just meant stay in your lane. So Japanese players, only the NPB, and American players, only MLB, or the minors, MILB, as they call it now. So it just kept them separate. So that was the agreement, and it would be 30 years, just about, until another player came from Japan to MLB. But we'll get there. So from 65 to 73, the Giants of Yomiuri were dominant in the NPB. They won 9 straight Japan series, in addition to the domination they had when they were in the JBL. And then the next thing of note is from 69 to 71, there was the Black Mist scandal. And this involved the NPB and the Yakuza and flat track motorcycle racing. I don't really know what flat track motorcycle racing is. Maybe I'll find a picture and show one here, but if you're unfamiliar with fixing games, it's basically you pay players to perform poorly because it's easier to have the people lose a game and bet on it than try to win the game. So the Yakuza had the NPB players throw or fix games, and they got caught, and it resulted in several star players getting suspended, getting banned or suspended, or also take salary cuts, which doesn't usually happen here in the States. You're usually banned or suspended. And so many fans abandoned the NPB after this scandal that they had to contract 2 teams, and they lost ratings. Oh, sorry, it was not contract. 2 teams were sold. Well, basically it's a similar outcome, but they were sold because they lost so much goodwill with the fans. So that put the NPB in a tough spot. So now that brings us to 1971, basically 100 years after baseball was introduced by that guy. You remember his name? And that brings us to 73. And from 73 to 82, the Pacific League had a split season format where the first half winner played the second half winner to determine their champion that would face the Central League's winner. But people really didn't like it, so they abandoned it in 82. Then in 1975, the PAC League, Pacific League, I don't know if they call it the PAC League, they adopted the DH, which was 2 years after the American League did that in the MLB. This change, along with the split season change, were implemented to bring fans back after the scandal. Then we go to the 80s and 90s. Throughout the 80s, American players began coming over to play in the NPB, including Leron and Leon Lee brothers, Greg Boomer Wells, Randy Bass, and Ralph Bryant. Came over to the NPB. And then from 82 to 94, after 20 years of poor play, the Cebu Lions became the dominant team, winning 11 Pacific League titles and 8 Japan Series. And then another big moment in the league's history was in 1995 when Hideo Nomo, quote unquote, retired from his team, the Kintetsu Buffaloes, and then he signed with the LA Dodgers. And then in the MLB, he won the 95 Rookie of the Year in the NL. And throughout his career, he threw 2 no-hitters and played 14 years. So his success in the MLB led to more NPB players coming over and eventually led to the posting system that we have today. And I'll go into that in a bit. Since he came over, more than 60 NPB players have come to the MLB. So that brings us through the 90s. So in the 2000s, this is September of 04, there was a strike for the first time in 70 years. The players went on strike in the NPB. So the main disputes were merging both leagues, because the teams in the Central made more money. We'll just say money. And the Pacific League teams wanted more, so they were just going to merge everyone, and they were also going to merge two teams. The Oryx Blue Wave and the Osaka Kintetsu Buffaloes. The players tended to have the support of the public, and over the course of the month they came to an agreement and they let the two teams merge, but they kept the two leagues separate, and then added the Rakuten Golden Eagles. That way, each league had 6 teams, and they also added interleague play in order to solve the profit disparity. So both leagues would now play rather than being totally separate until the Japan series. All right, that's September of 04. So then in 2005, the following year, interleague play started. Interleague play started. And they all happened in a 7-week span in the middle of the season, which is how the MLB used to do it. I think it was like in June or July, all the teams would play interleague games for like 4 weeks. But now the schedule is balanced, so they play throughout the year to make whatever is easiest on travel and the players. But from 2005 to 2017, the Pacific League won the interleague battle every year except 09. So they were dominant. And then in 05, 07, the Pacific League, they added another playoff round. And this was the Pacific League Championship Series, so the PLCS, to determine who would represent the league in the Japan series. That was in 2005, and in 07, the Central followed suit. And so it has 2 stages. So stage 1 is the number 2 and number 3 teams in the standings play a 3-game series. And then stage 2 would be the winner plays the number 1 seed in a 5-game series. And then the winner would play the other winner from the other league. So they just added more games. I guess before it probably was just the number 1 team in each league would play each other. So that brings us through the 2000s. Then in 2013, wow, that's a terrible 3. There was a juiced ball incident. It was secretly introduced, so it's not just a conspiracy. It was actually something that happened, and home runs went up, of course. And I think I've mentioned this before, but juiced just means like enhanced illegally. Literally in MLB, usually it means steroids. So like just juiced with illegal supplements. So the home run record, which was 55, was broken that year. And it was 60 by Vladimir Ballantyne of the Tokyo Yakult Swallows, and he hit 60. And then 3-term commissioner of the league, Ryozo Kato, was forced to resign over the scandal, though he claimed he didn't know about the baseballs. And this is rumored to have happened in MLB in 2019, because there was a big home run increase across the league. And I forget her name, but there's this sports scientist, this woman at some university here in the States who got a hold of the balls that year and analyzed them and found that they were juiced, or they were livelier. They came off the bat better, and they went further. But the MLB has denied anything, and, it remains a conspiracy to this day. But I think it happened because players' numbers went up league-wide, and then, a year later or 2 years later, when the old balls or new balls were introduced, people's numbers went back down. So it wasn't just one guy or two guys. The balls were different. And then from 2022 to present, this isn't the league per se, but baseball in Japan, once per year, former NPB and MLB player and Hall of Famer now, Ichiro Suzuki, he organizes a game between high school girls baseball teams versus former MLB and NPB players to raise awareness, or not raise awareness, but to help grow girls baseball in Japan. And he takes it very seriously. He follows the same meticulous pregame warm-up and routine that he did in MLB. So there's some great articles on it in The Athletic. If you don't read that, I have referenced it in other videos. I read it a lot, especially for baseball. They do some great work. But Ichiro is one of my favorite players of all time. He's a great dude. He's really funny. He was really good at the game. So he does this, and he'll pitch. And, he pitches like 100 pitches, and he'll throw his arm out just to give his all to this game once a year, which I think is really cool. So that's sort of the history of the league. Just a couple stats today. So the NPB worldwide is the 12th most profitable league of any sports leagues. I can't spell today, forgive me. And it is the second wealthiest baseball league, second only to the MLB. So the NPB does $1.2 billion of business per year, and the MLB, for comparison, does $12 billion per year. So it's about 10 times bigger. And if you were wondering, just as a point of reference, the number one league in all of the world is the NFL, and they do $19 billion per year. So MLB is not too far behind. And the NPB, of course, is the wealthiest sports league in Asia, and they also have the second highest season attendance, behind only MLB. And, that's kind of a considerable feat, given that they play considerably fewer games each season, which I'll get to in a moment. So that's the history of the league through the present, just some major milestones and things that happened from, the introduction of the league, rule changes, and the scandal. So, yeah, that's the history. Now we'll get into the league structure and some of how they play the game over in Japan. Now we'll do the league structure. So it remains the same as the NPB's founding. There are two leagues, the Central and Pacific Leagues, and they operate as separate entities, unlike American sports, where like in the MLB, the AL and the NL used to be separate leagues until they combined into the MLB. And then like the NFL has the AFC and the NFC, but they're part of the NFL. They don't exist as separate things. And the TV rights are always held by the home team, which I thought was an interesting wrinkle. So that's the major leagues. And then in the minors, there are two leagues, and they are the Eastern and Western leagues. And each team in the NPB gets one minor league team. That's official. I think they have like unofficial teams that are somewhat affiliated with them, but they get one official minor league team. So then the Central League owns and operates the Eastern Minor League, and the Pacific owns and operates the Western League. And then I'll get to more about the season and postseason play, but for the minors, the Eastern League plays an 80-game season, and then the Western League, for some reason, I guess because they're separate entities, they play a maximum of 132 games, and they use winning percentage to determine their winners rather than just number of wins. So they have a big disparity there, but that's how they do it. And then they meet in the Farm Japan Championship game. It's just a one-game single championship game, and it's been going since 1987. So those are the minors. Oh yeah, I do have a note here that NPB teams are allowed to have more than one minor league team so long as they are outside of the established minor league system, but only the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks and Yomiuri Giants have done so with 3 and 2 respectively. And then one more note below the minor leagues are the developmental leagues. Teams below the minor leagues play exhibition matches against various college, industrial, Shikoku Island League Plus, which is another league, and other NPB minor league teams. And players in these leagues are called developmental players, so they're sort of below the minor leagues or unaffiliated. And now I will explain the current teams in the NPB. I think some are similar, some are the same from when they started, and some have changed. So the teams in NPB, we'll do the Central League first, and I'll also include the city where they play. So again, we have the Chunichi Dragons, and they play in Nagoya. And the Hanshin Tigers. So they play in both Osaka and Hyogo, along with another team that splits time between there. I don't know why they have that set up, but they do. The Hiroshima Carp, and as you can guess, they play in Hiroshima. Tokyo Yakut Swallows. They were formerly the Kokutetsu Swallows, and they play in Shinjuku, which is a part of Tokyo. And the Yokohama DNA Bay Stars. That's an interesting name. And they play in Yokohama. Just for short. And then the final Central League team, in alphabetical order, of course, is the Yomiuri Giants. And they play in Bunkyo, also a part of Tokyo. And of course, they were formerly known as the Tokyo Giants, and before that, Dai Nippon Tokyo Yakyu Kurabu. And the, just FYI, the DNA Bay Stars in Yokohama were formerly the Taiyo Whales, which you may remember from earlier. That's the Central League right now. And then the Pacific League teams. We have the Chiba Lotte Marines. And this team was formerly the Mainichi Orions and the Daiei Stars, which merged. And they play in Chiba. The Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks. And they were formerly the Nankai Hawks. They play in Fukuoka. The Hokkaido Nippon Ham Fighters. Don't ask me what a ham fighter is. They were formerly the Tokyu Flyers, and they play in Kita, Hiroshima. Kuroshima. The Oryx Buffaloes, which I believe is where Yoshinobu Yamamoto was pitching, or maybe Roki Sasaki. They were formerly known as the Hankyu Braves and the Kintetsu Pearls, who merged, and they are the other team that play in Osaka and Hyogo. So one is in each league, which is interesting. Next is the Saitama Seibu Lions, formerly the Nishitetsu Clippers, and they play in Tokorozawa. And finally, we have the Tohoku Rakuten Golden Eagles, which I believe is where Shohei played, and they play in Sendai. So there's 6 teams in each league now for a total of 12, as opposed to, I think they started with 15. So they've contracted a little bit. Some fun facts here we'll do next. Let me just make some more room here. I need like another whiteboard here. Unlike in MLB, all the teams are owned by parent companies rather than private individuals or groups of private individuals pooling money. And this is the same as the KBO. And the Hanshin Tigers and Yomiuri Giants rivalry has been called basically their Yankees Red Sox rivalry. Don't need that. Don't know why I did that. Historically, they've been very evenly matched. The Giants have won 1,127 times, and the Tigers have won 888. Apparently all the teams have financial problems, and they operate with corporate subsidies from their parent companies. As much as $44 million a year, apparently. And then if we want to go to championship count, you're probably curious about that, as I was. Let's do it in reverse order. This isn't obviously all of them, but just the top teams. The Chibalota Marines have 4. The Oryx Buffaloes, they have 5. The Tokyo Yakut Swallows, they have 6. Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks, they have 11. Saitama Seibu Lions have 13, and can you guess who has the most? The Yomiuri Giants. How many do you think they have? 22. So they are by far and away the best team historically in the NPB, followed by the Seibu Lions and the Hawks, who are somewhat close, and then down the line. So that is some fun facts about the league. Now I will explain the season and postseason format. So we'll do season, post season. So So in general, the NPB plays 6 games a week with no Mondays. And Garfield would be happy about that. Unlike the MLB, there are no doubleheaders, and haven't since the late 90s, which I thought was crazy, but that's good for the players, right? The season starts in late March, early April, much like the MLB. The season is 143 games since 2007, and it's an basically even split between home and away. Obviously, with an odd number, it's not totally even, but it's basically even. And teams play their 5 intra-league opponents, so the teams in their league, 25 times, and then they play their 6 inter-league from the other league teams 3 times each. And then this is in late May to early June. And I guess a separate interleague champion is crowned. So it's the team with the best record in the 18 games of interleague play. That's kind of cool. And then there are 2 to 3 all-star games. I thought that was interesting too, because there's only 1 in MLB. And those are in July. And then the season ends in October, just like the MLB. So it's very similar in terms of time of year. 143 games is similar to 162 like the MLB, or I think they used to play 154 or 151, I forget. But yeah, it's very similar to the MLB. So that's the season. I will now do the postseason. So like I said before, both leagues added that extra round, which they call the Climax Series. So that's the top 3 teams in each league play the Climax Series. Like I said, it's the 2 stages. Stage 1 is the wild card round. Stage 1 is wild card, where number 2 plays the number 3 team in a 3-game series. And all the games are at the number 2 seed's home stadium. And then stage 2, which is technically called the Climax Series, even though the whole thing is called the Climax Series. This is the number 1 versus the winner of the above. And this is a 6-game series. And the fun fact is that the number 1 seed starts with a 1-0 lead, aka a ghost win, and all the games are at the number 1 seed stadium. So there is a significant advantage to winning your league, or at least coming in second, because you get all your games at home in stage 1. But the number 1 seed starts 1-0 and then also has all home games. So that's kind of crazy. And then the Japan Series, like I said, is their World Series. It's the winners of each league. Winner of the Pacific League versus winner of the Central League. And it's a 7-game series. So that's the postseason format. It is similar to how MLB used to be, I guess. it would be the DS, then the CS, then the World Series. So this is before wild cards were added in the MLB, if you were looking for a comparison. So now we'll do some rules. Games are called after 12 innings. Well, innings pitched, but innings. And games are not suspended, so they can end in a tie. Auto ejection. If you hit a batter near their head or argue a call for more than 3 minutes, you are automatically ejected. They also have video review, like the MLB. And similar to the MLB, you cannot review balls and strikes, although that is now changing in the MLB next season. Check swings. Hit by pitches, can't review that. Obstruction or interference by fans or non-player personnel. Infield flies. And balks, as well as batted balls in the infield. So there's a lot of things you can't review. Like the KBO, ties can happen, obviously, but they don't factor in winning percentage for determining different winners to go to the playoffs. They're also allowed in the postseason if the climax series ends in a 1-1-1 tie. The higher seed advances. So yet another advantage to being a higher seed, which places more emphasis on the regular season. And then if the Japan series ends in a 3-3-1 tie, Game 8 is played with unlimited innings, which I think is pretty cool. Unlimited innings. Hypothetically, a Japan series could go up to 14 games in length if each of the first 7 games resulted in a 12-inning tie. So that's kind of crazy. Some roster rules here. You get 29 players, but 25 are active, or called registered players. And each team can have up to 4 foreign players maximum, but they can't be all 4 of the same type. They can't all be 4 pitchers or 4 position players. So 3 and 1 is the max. You have to have a mix. Registered players, also called first squad players. And then non-registered players. Non-registered players are second squad players, and they play in the minors. So it's similar to how MLB does it. And then for the playoffs, teams select a 40-man roster. and they can't be replaced within the playoffs. Although I don't know how injury would work, or like personal, like paternity leave or any personal matters. There was a Dodgers player who missed the World Series because he had a family emergency. So I don't know how that works here. And then similarly to rosters, free agency, a couple notes on that. It's based on years, number of years on the roster as a registered player. So you need 145 days registered to get 1 year of service time. Registered days from seasons with less than 145 days are accumulated separately. So like if you have a short season, you have to add it to other short seasons to get to 1 full year. And then in order to become a free agent, you have to have either 7 or 8 years of service time. And you need 9 to become an international free agent and go to MLB. So it's a long time. I think it's 6 years in MLB. I think that's true. And like the first 3 you get whatever salaries you get is, I think it's a minimum or a standard salary. And then the last 3 are called arbitration, where you and the team will figure out a salary or go in front of an arbitrator to make your case, and then they make a decision. The draft is similar. It started in 1965. It's similar in that there's an amateur draft for the league, but it's actually quite different from, like, say, MLB or anyone else. So the first round is a bidding lottery system. All the teams submit the names of the players they wish to select. And then so if, like, you submit the names, so if only one team submits a name, then they get that player, and that's their first round pick. But if there are overlapping picks, then the decision is made by lottery, so I think it's just random. Teams that weren't selected in the lottery bid again, and then there's another lottery, and they keep going until all the first round picks are finalized. So they keep submitting names, and if you were the only one to submit that name, you get that player, and then you're out of that round. If you have multiple teams wanting someone, then it's just a blind lottery, and you try again. And then they do that again in the second round. And then I think they alternate priority. Which league gets to go first? They alternate priority in the second round every other year, but I think they also do in the first round. I'm not sure. Either way, they alternate priority. And then, so then the other league would go in the second round. They'd go first. And I assume it's by record, probably reverse record. I'm not sure. And then by the third round, the order is reversed. And then they keep going. Reverse order. And then after that, the selection process ends when teams are done. So it's either ends when they say done selecting. So if they have no more names they want to put forth, or there's 120 players have been drafted. So it's a maximum of 120 players, 10 per team. But the teams may just want to only draft like 90 total, and then they're all done. So if some of the teams are done selecting and they haven't reached 120 players yet, the remaining teams can do like 11th picks, 12th picks until you get to 120. But if all the teams are done and you haven't reached 120 players yet, there's then a developmental players selection meeting, which is held with the teams that want to keep going. So it's sort of like a separate thing. And then just as a note, the only eligible players are players who have never played professionally in Japan and are Japanese, they have Japanese nationality, or they've attended a Japanese junior high school, its equivalent, or it's a university. So if a foreigner attended a Japanese junior high, high school, or college, they could be drafted in the NPB. Otherwise, you have to be Japanese. Now we'll do awards, which are similar to the MLB awards. There is an MVP, most valuable player. There's one per league, like the MLB. It started in 1937, and the first one was won by Eiji Sawamura, who was a pitcher. They have a Rookie of the Year award. There is one per league, and it started in 1950. And then there is a Comeback Player of the Year award. That started in 1974. And then there is the Eiji Sawamura Award, which is basically the Cy Young. And there's one per league. That started in 1947, and it was named after Eiji Sawamura, the first MVP, who was a power pitcher, and he was the first MVP in 1937. He played with the Giants, and he had 3 no-hitters, and he won 4 championships. And his number 14 is retired with the Giants. So he is a big deal, much like Cy Young was in the early days of MLB. Then, of course, you have the Japan Series MVP. That's the best player in the Japan Series. Then they have something called the Fighting Spirit Award. This is the MVP of the losing team in the Japan Series, which I like. Because sometimes there is a player who was the best player in the series, but if their team loses, they rarely win the MVP award. In American sports, it has happened, especially like in the NBA, but it doesn't happen that often. So I like this idea. Then we have the Mitsui Golden Glove Award. It's obviously the same as MLB, the best fielder at each 9 positions for each league. And then the Golden Spirit Award. This started in 1999, and it was given to the NPB player who best exemplifies the game of baseball, sportsmanship, community involvement, and the individual's contribution to his team. So this one is sort of equivalent to the Roberto Clemente Award in MLB, which went to Mookie Betts this past season. And then the last major one, well, there's also the All-Star Games MVP. There's an MVP of each All-Star game. I just don't have room for it. So then the last major one is the Matsutaro Shiriki Award. named in honor of the former owner of the Yomiuri Giants and unofficial commissioner of NPB. He became basically like the godfather of Japanese baseball. So this started in 1977 and is presented to a manager or player who greatly contributed to the development of professional baseball. So it could go to a manager or player, and they get a gold medal. And they also get 5 million yen, which I don't have the equivalent in US dollars. So those are all your awards. A lot of them are similar to NPB. There's a couple other ones that are kind of interesting that we don't have here in the States, but they're fun to learn about. And now we'll go to foreign players who were in the NPB. So for most of its history, there was what was called the Gaijin Waku, which just means foreign player limit, which was, for the longest time, you could only have 2 or 3 on your team, and this included managers and coaches. So it's now up to 4, but like I said, it has to be a max of 3 and 1 pitchers or position players. You can't have all the same. And then if you can have more, but they have to go to your minor league team. They can't be registered. So traditionally, NPB teams tried to get MLB players on the decline, on the downside of their careers. But more recently, they have scouted AAA teams in the States for power hitters, since the style of play in NPB is traditionally more contact-oriented, so there aren't as many power hitters. And so more recently, they've been looking for power hitters in the States, in the minors, that maybe are ready to go play professionally, rather than maybe they're not going to get called up, or maybe they've been stuck in the AAA system for a while. So that's kind of cool. NPB can also, the teams there can offer more money to minor leaguers than the minor leagues can. And then in the 1940s, Taiwanese nationals, Sho Seigo and Hiroshi Oshita, both starred in the NPB. And then there have been some Korean players as well. Lee Seong-yop. I'm not going to list them all, I'll just read them. Lee Seong-yop, Sun Dong-yeol, Baek In-chun, Lee Jong-beom, and Dae-ho Lee were all Korean players that played in the NPB. And there were even some Venezuelan players, like Alex Ramirez, Alex Cabrera, Bobby Marcano, and Roberto Pedagine, who were all good NPB players. But most of the hundreds of foreign players in NPB were American. The first three American players in the NPB were Harris McGalliard, known as Bucky Harris in Japan, Herbert Buster North, and James E. Jimmy Bonner, and they all came over in 1936 in the JBL before NPB. So this is not NPB, this is Japan in general. And quick note, Bonner was African American. So he beat Jackie Robinson to the punch 11 years before Jackie broke the color barrier in the NPB, in the MLB. And Bucky Harris, aka Harris McGalliard, he was the 1937 NPB. Then you have Hawaiian Wally Yonamine. He was the first American to play pro baseball in the NPB and later became a manager. He was the first foreign manager to manage in the NPB. And then some, in the 60s, you had some Negro League players come over to the NPB, like John Britton, Jimmy Newberry, and Larry Raines. And then also in the 60s, you had former MLB players like Don Newcomb, Larry Doby, Joe Stanka. They all came over, and Stanka became the first American to win Pacific League MVP in 1964. And that same year, fellow American Gene Back became the first non-Japanese player to win the Sawamura Award. Randy Bass, who was a first baseman, is often credited for single-handedly turning around the fortunes of the Hanshin Tigers. They won the Japan Series in 1985 with him. And since the 70s, foreigners have also made an impact in managing and coaching an NPB, specifically, or notably, Bobby Valentine and Trey Hillman. And Bobby Valentine managed the Mets in the MLB, and I don't know the teams in the NPB, but I think there's a documentary from 30 for 30 about him managing in Japan. Other notable Americans, I won't list them here, but I will just read them off. George Altman, Ralph Bryant, Cecil Fielder, who played for the Hanshin Tigers before he went to the MLB. That's interesting. Adam Jones ended his successful MLB career playing 2 years with the Oryx Buffaloes. Jim Little, you may know him. He was the Japan Series MVP in 1980. Leron Lee, who played with his brother, Leon. He still has the Japanese record for career batting average at .334. Charlie Manuel, you may know him from managing in the MLB. He played 6 years in the NPB with a .303 batting average and 189 home runs, and then later became a manager in the NPB and MLB. Miles Mikolas played 3 years. He was a former Padre and Ranger pitcher and had a breakout career in the NPB with the Yomiuri Giants, and then he signed back with the Cardinals in 2017. Tom O'Malley was a member of the Hanshin Tigers and won a Golden Glove Award in '92 and the batting title the following year in '93. And then he left for the Yakult Swallows of Tokyo in 95, and then won both the Season MVP Award and Japan Series MVP Award. And then Alonzo Powell played 7 years from 92 to 98, and he's the first foreign player to win 3 straight batting titles from 94 to 96. And then, some some American NPB managers are Wally Onamine, Joe Lutz, and Don Blasingame were the first 3 Americans to manage in the NPB. And then following him were Marty Brown, Terry Collins, Leron Lee, Tom O'Malley, and Bobby Valentine, like I mentioned, who had managed the Mets and the Rangers. I don't know if I can fit that in here. And yes, I do have the note here. He was subject of the ESPN documentary The Zen of Bobby V, which followed him and his 2007 Chibalote Marines team. And it was an official selection at the Tribeca Film Festival. So check that one out. So that's just a brief overview of foreign players in the NPB. And how do they get there? They have to get posted now. We're going to do the posting system now, and this is how players come over from the NPB to the MLB. Like I said before, with Masanori Murakami, he was the first NPB player to come over to the MLB, but then when he played well with the San Francisco Giants, his NPB team, the Nankai Hawks, were mad and wanted him back, but the Giants didn't want to give him back. So they worked out an agreement, but after that, it kind of left a sour taste in the 2 leagues' mouths, I guess. This just kind of this was like a sour situation between the NPB and the MLB. So they had the player contract agreement, which basically it was also called the working agreement, and basically just was like a hands-off policy. It was a hands-off policy. Hands-off for 30 years. In the 90s, like I've mentioned before, there were 3 incidents that led to the posting system. And the first was Hideo Nomo, who retired and then went to play with the Dodgers and won those awards. And then Hideki Irabu was the next one. And then Alfonso Soriano, who they all hired the same agent, and they utilized the loopholes such as retiring from NPB, and then they could just go play in the MLB because they could make so much more money. So after Soriano, MLB commissioner Bud Selig had to step in, and they decided to change their formal agreement. So then the next phase of players coming between the 2 leagues was 1998, and it lasted until 2013, through the 2012 season. And it was renewed yearly. So either commissioner could decline it and it would expire, but they kept it going for this long. And so during this phase of the posting system, it worked kind of like this. MLB had a 4-day silent auction. And so teams would submit sealed bids to the commissioner. And after 4 days, the commissioner closed the bidding and notified the posted player's NPB team of the highest bid, but not the team. So highest dollar amount told to the NPB team. And then the NPB team had 4 days to decide if they accept or reject the bid. And then if the bid was rejected, the NPB team kept the rights to the player. If it was accepted, then that team had 30 days to negotiate exclusively with the player. And then, if after accepting the bid, if the player and the MLB team came to terms on a salary or a contract, then the bid became the transfer fee from the MLB team to the NPB team. And then the player would play for the MLB team in the coming season. If the team in the MLB and the player could not come to an agreement, no fee was paid and the player's rights went back to the NPB team. And then the player could request to be posted again, and the process would be repeated with no advantage to the team in the MLB who had won the prior year. So that was the initial system, silent bids, and the players didn't know, well, the teams and players didn't know what MLB team was interested, which is kind of weird, but that's how they did it for a while. And then very briefly, for 4 years, there was an update to this system. So no more blind bids. So they knew the teams in this system. And then any team could negotiate with the player. But the posting fee was capped at $20 million. So it was a little bit different. The main difference is there is no more blind bids. And then, starting in 2018, we have our present-day posting system. It's basically the same as the previous one. There's no blind bids. Any team can negotiate with the player. It's a 30-day window, and there is no cap to the fee. So, if the player's going to the MLB from the NPB, the fees are 20% of the first $25 million, 17.5% of the next $25 million, and then 15% of anything over 50 million. This is total contract, not yearly. And then if they're going to the minors, it's a flat fee of 25% of the contract. So, and then obviously those fees go to the NPB team as a transfer fee. So I think, Yamamoto came over recently and he made a lot of money, so his team got a lot of money too. And this is the way it is now, seems the most fair to me, because you want as many teams to freely bid on the player, and then the player knows which team bid what, and he can choose where to play and potentially accept a lower bid to play for a team that he wants to play for, which hasn't really been the case recently, as a lot of the players are going to the Dodgers, which we'll get to very soon. So some high-profile players that came over in chronological order in recent years through the posting system came Ichiro Suzuki, Daisuke Daisuke Matsuzaka, also known as Daisuke here. He had his gyro slider, I think it was, his special pitch. Then Yu Darvish, Padre and Cubs pitcher, Rangers pitcher. Masahiro Tanaka, one of my favorite recent Yankees. I think he's still playing in NPB. Obviously Shohei Ohtani, who's the best player on the planet. And Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who just set the record for the biggest contract given to a pitcher in MLB at $325 million. Tanaka was first to be posted in the revised system with a $20 million cap fee. And then Ohtani was the first after the capped fee. Ohtani was the first posted through the current system, but was grandfathered in to the old cap of the fee. So then Yamamoto was the first to have an uncapped fee, and because his contract was so large, the fee ended up being $50.6 million to the Oryx Buffaloes. So good for them. So those are some really high-profile players, but some other players that I'd like to mention, who you may or may not know, are Egawa, Kazuhiro Sasaki, Kenta Maeda, Yusei Kikuchi, Blue Jay and Astros pitcher, and Angels, I believe, Shintaro Fujinami, I think he's a reliever, Masataka Yoshida, outfielder and DH for the Red Sox, Yoshi Tsutsugo, Seiya Suzuki, who I showed earlier, splitting a ball in half with a sword, and Shota Imanaga. Both of those guys are Cubs. And then, just notably, Hideki Matsui, the Yankee great and former NPB player, was not posted, even though he came over during the time of this system. He played out his NPB contract and then came over. He just finished his NPB contract and then came to the MLB. And then, of course, just wanted to mention Roki Sasaki also came over, but he was not considered a professional because he was only 23, so he was considered an international amateur. It meant that teams could only offer him a max contract of about $7.5 million a year rather than, whatever Yamamoto got per year, 325 over 12. So that was just a little bit different of a situation. And then also a couple other players that will likely come over this year are Tatsuya Imai, Munetaka Murakami, and Kazuma Okamoto, and possibly others. But they made the list. They made the top 20 free agents list in my last video. All right, so that's basically the history and overview of NPB. Next, I just want to briefly mention the Tokyo series and then the national level before we go. So as you probably know, the MLB kicked off their season last year in Tokyo between the Cubs and Dodgers. A 3-game set. Sorry, it was a 2-game set. The Dodgers won both despite not having Mookie Betts because he was sick. And this was at the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo. And they also played exhibition games against the Tigers, Hanshin Tigers, and the Giants, Yomiuri Giants. And the Japanese natives, Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and Roki Sasaki played against Shota Imanaga and Seiya Suzuki of the Cubs. This was the 6th time MLB began the season in Japan. It's the 25th anniversary of the first game in Japan in 2000 between the Mets and Cubs, which is why the Cubs were included. And it was the first time back in Japan since 2019 when you had the A's and Mariners. And then next year, it doesn't look like MLB is starting the season outside of the country, but they will be playing a series in Mexico. It seems like it's not officially confirmed, but it looks like in April, the Padres and the Diamondbacks are going to be playing in Mexico City. Now I just want to talk about a few other things like the World Baseball Classic. So we'll do the World Baseball Classic, the Tokyo Dome, and the Japanese Hall of Fame. Samurai Japan is the Japanese national baseball team. I love that name. I mean, Team USA is cool. It's very standard descriptive of the team, but Samurai Japan is such a cool name. And then they, of course, represent Japan in the World Baseball Classic, in the Olympics, and the Asian Baseball Classic, which is a tournament between Asian teams, including China, Japan, South Korea, Chinese Taipei, the Philippines, and Australia. So all these Pacific Eastern teams. So in total, Samurai Japan has won 3 World Baseball Classic gold medals, 1 Olympic gold, and I think baseball is back next year for the Olympics. I'm not sure, though. 20 Asian Baseball Classic gold medals. And they've won bronzes in each of those events, championships, and then as well as silver medals in the ABC. And they play all their games as a national team in the Tokyo Dome, which was built in 1988 and is also home to the Giants, Yomiuri Giants, and the Ham Fighters. It has a capacity of 45,600 and has hosted the WBC when it comes. It's hosted like the earlier pool rounds of the WBC before, and it also houses the Hall of Fame. So the Hall of Fame was established in 1959 and moved to the Dome when it was opened in 88. Similar to MLB, a player, executive, or umpire they're all eligible, not just players, but an individual must meet 75% of the vote on a ballot. And there's also a special committee, like the MLB, who can elect players, sort of as a go-around if they don't make it on the ballot. As of the time of recording of this video, there are 131 players, / executives / umpires in the Hall of Fame. And just for comparison, there are 346 in Cooperstown. So a little bit smaller, but the league has been smaller, of course. So I'll probably do a video on the MLB Hall of Fame someday. But that's the stats on the Japanese Hall of Fame and Tokyo Dome and the World Baseball Classic. And that's basically the overview of the NPB and baseball in Japan. I hope you enjoyed learning about the deep history of baseball over there. And hopefully I can figure out a way to watch some NPB because I'm curious now. And hopefully the players that come over this off-season make an impact on their teams. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know your favorite thing that you learned from this video down in the comments. And of course, as always, let me know what you'd like me to do a video on in the future. I think my next video will be on the World Baseball Classic. May not be till next year, but we'll see. As my schedule is starting to pick up professionally. So yeah, thank you for coming by, and like and subscribe and all that jazz, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.